The busing crisis of 1975 caused immense turmoil throughout Louisville. The city was forced to face how segregated the school system was for the first time when the controversial policy of busing students to schools that were not close to their home began. The purpose of this program was to integrate the segregated school system and provide equal opportunity for all students, regardless of race. To properly understand the busing crisis and why it became a crisis, Louisville's racial history should be stated. The history is largely shaped by geography, in that it is on the northern border of Kentucky, a border state between the northern and southern half of the United States. For this reason, Louisville is often called the Gateway to the South, a title many Louisvillians take pride in. It is this geographic uniqueness, though, that shaped Louisville into a city with both northern and southern sentiments and interests, and perpetuated a common theme throughout Louisville's history: the recurrence of polite racism. It was, and still is, to a degree, believed that Louisville does not have the racial problems of its southern neighbors, despite the clear evidence that it does. Louisville's persistent denial of racial problems allowed for the city to become highly segregated and for that segregation to be ingrained in the school system. Louisville's school system was inherently unjust, in that the best schools were in predominantly white neighborhoods with virtually no racial mixing among schools. Black students went to black schools, and white students went to white schools. After Brown v. Board of Education, integration efforts gained steam on the national scale, and Louisville's solution to fixing the segregated school system was a policy of busing students to schools they otherwise would not have gone to. Black students were bused to predominantly white schools, and some white students were bused to predominantly black schools. This process obviously faced major backlash, as the term busing crisis insinuates. Groups in favor of the busing program were predominantly leftist, focused on racial equality, and included city advocates and parents. Advocates for busing included various churches, organizations such as Progress in Education, which included notable activist Ann Braden as a coordinator, and parent groups that were formed to help parents make informed decisions in regard to their children's safety and education. These different groups and organizations held marches and rallies and spread awareness however possible, especially through churches. They sought to spread their message that segregation was deeply and problematically ingrained in Louisville's school system, and that busing was a valid way of integrating the school system. They also wanted to warn parents about the threat of adversary groups such as the Ku Klux Klan and white students that would incite violence at schools in an attempt to tarnish the black students' reputations. On the other end of the situation, anti-busing groups were mostly conservative, white, and supported by white parents, labor unions, the KKK, and many government officials. The anti-busing groups also held marches and rallies and spread their message that busing was dangerous for white students and that the policy would be terribly expensive. The latter argument was actually quite true. Busing was an expensive program, and it was up to Louisville taxpayers to fund it. The federal government offered little to no help financially, stating that it was Louisville's fault for having such a segregated school system, and that it was up to the city to fix it. It would not be unreasonable, however, to assume that some of the people who cited financial reasons as their opposition also had at least some racist sentiment. Interestingly, there were examples of black parents being against the busing program as well, because they did not want their kids to spend all day being shuttled around on a bus. Ultimately, the busing crisis resulted in a lot of tension throughout the different socioeconomic sectors of Louisville, resulting in some violence, though most of the marches and protests were peaceful. Its legacy is still felt, however, as Louisville has remained dedicated to integration in the school system. Despite opposition to the policy, Louisville's busing program continues to this day. Though Louisville has racism ingrained in its society, the city's persistence in integrating the school system is a huge step in the right direction toward making the city welcoming toward all races.